Hi there, welcome to our preview of Grid 2. As the name suggests, this is based on preview code of the game, so there are likely to be some bugs as we're going through. Occasionally we've seen flickering textures, and we have had a couple of audio issues where some of the features have caused the sound to cut out a little bit. Not anything that worries us, that's the type of thing that gets fixed in kind of final builds. And so when the game reaches retail, none of that should be in there. Just to be aware of it as we're going through the video here that it might happen. So this is our main interface for the game, and we access the racing through the PC over there on the left. We'll come back to that in a minute. Looking through the menu here, we've got the vehicle here. There are a number of cars unlocked in the preview code. We can't do very much with them just now, but as you can see from the menu options there, we'll be able to change the vehicle in the garage, change the graphics that are on it, things like that. We also can walk around the car in the preview code, but don't need to worry about that just now. Over here we've got the main options where we can change the driver details, and in the full game we'll be able to go into RaceNet and compare our stats with other racers and interact with them and things like that. Pretty standard options in here, so we can change the controls. We're using an Xbox controller from Razer for this preview. Pretty standard triggers to accelerate and brake. We can handbrake with B, all things like that, and access flashback with Y, which is something we'll look at later on. We can change the vibration, what's on the display, our audio settings, and as is pretty normal with Codemasters games, we have a selection of video options. This is a DirectX 11 game. These settings here we're using primarily just because we want to record the video while we're going, and using a GTX 680 with these settings we get absolutely flawless frame rates with ultra detail. Speaking of ultra detail, with it being a DirectX 11 game, similar to Dirt Showdown and the F1 games from Codemasters, we get all different advanced lighting and water effects and things like that that just add a little bit to the game. And then finally we've got difficulty in here. It goes from very easy right the way up to very hard. Each of the difficulty levels also has damage levels, so we can have very easy with full damage, or we can have very hard and turn damage on to just visual. We'll leave it on very easy just now, just for the preview video, because it'll allow us to move through a little bit quicker. In terms of balance, the game is actually quite challenging on easy, and probably just about right on medium. No cars go racing off ahead as if they're supercars, and we don't pull too far ahead if we get into first place. Medium's about right. If you're new to racing games, you're going to want to go on very easy or easy, because the game is quite unforgiving to crashes and going off track and things like that. It's not so much on track racing, but on out of city road races it can be pretty hard. And the exit door over there just takes us out of the game. So let's take a look at the PC over here. So this is us over at the main interface for the racing. Grid 2 tries to build itself around modern-ish technology. We've got the race control through the PC screen here. When we're going through the career mode, we've got the voiceover telling us that we've got YouTube videos about us, and people are training camera phones on us and things like that. It's not really needed, and it's a bit cheesy, but you don't need the best story in the world for a race game. Before we look at one of the career mode races in a moment, let's just head over into the series over here. There are 4 game types in the preview code here. The first one is track racing with kind of supercar type things. Very standard grid start, race to the end over X number of laps, and just try and get into the first place and gain various different things for doing that. Drift series is pretty much what it says. So we've got a reasonably short track, we've got quite light cars, they allow us to drift and spin and things like that. the longer our drifts go on for, the more points we get, and the racer with the most points at the end of the track, they win. This race style in here, we've got city races and things like that. What makes it a little bit different is that the tracks change as the race progresses. So you could do, for example, one lap and it's a familiar track layout that you've seen before for one of the career races or something like that. On lap 2 the course changes and all the drivers have to follow a different route. Where this particularly comes into play is in multiplayer. We attended a multiplayer session for the game because there's no multiplayer in the preview code, and so the variable race layouts make things that little bit more hectic and more interesting than just everyone going around the same circuit they've seen loads and loads of times. Balances things out for people who have not played the game as much as others and just keeps it that little bit fresher. And then the final race style is the Eliminator series, and this is more city races and things like that, but what happens with this one is that every 20 seconds the person in last place is eliminated, and then the person who is in first place, as we cut down, when they're the only one left, they're the winner. So we'll drop into the career mode for the moment. Various different races in here, you unlock things as you go along. This is just the initial race that we're going to do today on the preview video. To get to this point, we have been dropped into an initial race. As soon as the game starts, there's no options or choices. Basically, start the game, go into career mode, and it kicks off with this race where we get discovered by a promoter. And what they want to do is take us from nothing up to being part of the biggest race community in the world. We've got to impress fans along the way, we've got to get the respect of other teams and basically build a race organisation that is one of the biggest around. Following that, you get a little tutorial which teaches you about braking and drifting. So that initial race is just very much dropping you in there, no tutorials, just get in and race. It's a technique we've seen before in games, but the tutorial comes that little bit later, gives you an idea of how to control some of the cars, and you can play about in that tutorial for as long as you want before entering into the main races. And each different race type, whether it be career or in the racing series that we saw in the menu a moment ago, the cars change. And just have a quick look around the Ford here. As I mentioned earlier, you can have a look around your vehicle, so if you were to go in and change the paintwork and things like that, you'd be able to take a look at it as you go. So we'll select the Ford and we'll go into the main racing. We get a little intro video on some tracks, and we also get a note of a racer we should watch for in the game as we're going along.
Look out for this driver on track today.
So this is us just starting the first race in career mode.
Right, today should be familiar.
As we mentioned earlier, this is a game which is quite unforgiving even when you're on easy. You want to stay very much on the track. Just heading off the side will send you pretty much all over the place. One of the main things we've noticed when playing through Grid 2 is that it's a game which isn't about just hitting the accelerator and not using brake and battering through and hitting other cars and things like that. You want to race smoothly, you want to pick your spaces and try and get through gaps when you see them, but hit another car or let another car hit you and you will be all over the place, a bit like that. Damage is part of the game. Your car starts to handle differently when you get hit and take too much damage when you have the mode enabled in the menu, and your race is over basically. If you hit something head on, a fence or a tree or something like that, then you will be completely out of the race straight away. and that's when things like flashbacks come
I want
into
to see
play.
you get a good
Take
eye
a
on
look
his
at
racing
them later
line and
on.
pass this guy.
But as you can see, even though I had a little bit of a crash back there, just racing smoothly, keeping an eye on the road, allows you to catch up with the other racers pretty quickly. And there's full damage. So that's the first race mode. We could kick off flashback at this point, but we won't. We'll save that for later on. You can get full replays and things like that. So let's head back to the main menu. Everything's done via leaderboards and things like that. You can retire, you can
That was a race ender. Tough
do all
break,
the
bud.
normal kind of race game things. So what we'll take a look at next is one of the track races from the Racing Series portion of the game. One of the things we've felt when going through the different race styles in Grid 2 is that they do all feel very different. All the cars have a unique feel to them, things like that. When you move from something like the out of city race that we've just seen to the race here in the kind of more powerful cars on a track, it feels completely different. And you need to think about what you're doing. Still the same style of game where you have to pay attention to what you're doing, try and look for gaps, try and not crash too much because you'll just be sent into a spin.
Stay alert.
But as you just saw there, the other cars do crash into themselves, and there can be quite a lot of carnage going on in all the different races, especially in things like Eliminators. We've noticed a lot more crashes.
Top three.
One of the other things that we've noted while going through is that in races like this one on the track, they're a little bit more forgiving than the races where you've got trees and things at the side. If you hit the gravel like that, you just go straight back on again. It slows you down a bit if you go really wide into the gravel, but even though you're making mistakes in this one, as we have there, it's not really having too much of an impact on what we're doing. Just got to take it smooth and easy, and eventually you start to build up a lead. We also found that the graphics in the game do vary quite a bit. This sort of track is, we feel a little bit, or I feel a little bit nicer looking than the California highway that we had looked at before. It's a visual style which is, I would say, a lot closer to Dirt Showdown in those games,
Second place is only 5 seconds behind you.
rather than the F1 games. So we'll just take another look at a race style that's different to the two we've seen so far. So we're just going to take a look at the Eliminator series now. As we mentioned before, it's just a case of racing as fast as we can through the track. We don't need to worry about first place to begin with, it's all about staying out of last place. And in fact, we don't really even need to be in first place until the last few seconds of the track. Again, it's another standing start, and we get a 20-second countdown on Eliminator. Just need to care more at this stage about staying with the pack, not smashing our car up, and then staying out of last place now that the elimination countdowns have started. In 9 seconds or so, someone's going to get eliminated.
Okay, one down, and it wasn't you. Good work.
As you can see from this race, the cars seem a lot less worried about damage and things. They want to knock you about a little bit. And seeing as we've made our way into first place, we're pretty much home and dry at the moment, other than if we have a significant crash. Remember, we're playing on very easy at the moment just for the sake of the video, so it is a lot more challenging on medium, and it gets very, very difficult on the higher difficulty settings. Let's give the other guys a chance to catch up at the moment. Pretty much Eliminator. Tracks vary, cars vary, but just make sure you stay near the front of the pack. And when it comes down to the last few seconds, get into first and win the race. So for the final part of this video, we're going to head into one of the drift races. Again, we have car choices just like we do in every other part of the game. We're going to go with this one. The lighter the car, the easier it tends to be to do spins and things like that, which also get you points as well as the drifting. But the main reason for going into the drift race here is to show you the flashback functionality. It's been quite common in a lot of racing games recently, and allows you, if you have a major crash, to rewind time.
Okay, he's the one to watch this race.
And then carry on. Some people love it, some people hate it. For a reviewer, it's actually quite good because, as we've seen in this video, it's not easy to talk, make a video and drive at the same time. So it makes things nice and easy. Just tap the brake like that to drift, and as you can see, the points are climbing. The more points you get, the more likely you are to win. You always want to throw yourself around every corner and for as long as possible. Faster you go, obviously, the more likely you are to get a high score and a longer drift. But if it all goes horribly wrong, as it's about to,
Nice drift.
you just rewind time, carry on with what you're doing. And as you can see, there's a little bit of an audio bug there, just the sound dropped out for a moment, but that's just preview code for you, and the final game will be like that. There was no real time consideration on that drive, it was just a case of get as many points as you possibly can, and as you see,
First place.
on very easy, quite a difference in scores there. That 143,000 gets you probably in the first place on the medium level. Not too much more to say about it really. Nice, simple, different style of gameplay that means there's a little bit of something in Grid 2 for everyone. So that's our preview for today. It covers the main features of the single player game. Multiplayer is, as you would expect, it's a lot of the same game modes, just done online. And overall, Grid 2 has been quite a bit of fun. We'll have a full review when we have final code with us, but overall a promising start for this game.